Yeah, yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to join us. Uh, Today is I think although this is Friday, and I still can see a lot of friends and students here for our education webinar. And this is our first education webinar of our CPGIS series webinars. And so welcome all of you. And today, oh, I forgot to introduce myself. Yeah, my name is Ming Chen, and I'm now the president of CPGIS. So I will host the first webinar here. And uh, today it is our honor to invite Dr. Qunshan Zhao, and he will give the first webinars about understanding cities and by urban sensors and some analysis method. And the first, I take this opportunity to give a very short introduction about Dr. Qunshan Zhao. And Dr. Zhao is a senior lecturer and also like associate professor in urban um, analytic in urban study and also associate uh, direction uh, director of the Urban Big Data Center at the School of Social and Political Science at the University of Glasgow. Sorry, so I need to make it bigger. Sorry. And his research interests focus on creating sustainable urban futures and something like that. And he also published a lot of papers in this field. And I'm sure some of our students have read these papers and also read some like researches from Dr. Zhao. So I will pass my time to Dr. Zhao and welcome, Dr. Zhao. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ming, for the introduction. So yeah, let me share my screen. Can you see my slides?
Yes, very well. Yeah.
I'll go to the presenter mode. So
Yeah.
yeah, it looks fine, right? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Ming, again. So for the introduction. So yeah, it's good to see everybody here and old friends, new friends for sure. Students, colleagues. Yeah, so my name is Qunshan Zhao, and I'm a senior lecturer in urban analytics, based in the UK or Scotland. So I'm in the Urban Big Data Center, which is one of the I would say the UK social science data infrastructure, and also yeah, it's part of the University of Glasgow. Yeah, it is great to be invited here to present the first CPGIS educational webinar in spring. Yeah, so I think today I will just briefly, you can see the title is certainly quite broad about by using urban sensing and analytics methodology to understand these cities. And by I will introduce briefly a couple of the projects we are working on right now and hope to give you some of the ideas. They are all ongoing projects, ongoing research. So I'm more than happy to hear your thoughts around it and what if you want to if there anything you have any questions or collaboration you want to request, that would be great. Let me quickly by myself. I've done my undergrad in Wuhan University. Yeah, yes, almost more than 10 years ago. And then I've been in Arizona for 6 years for my PhD, I mean, master PhD and the postdocs. And I joined Urban Studies and the University of Glasgow in 2019. It's almost 5 years here. So yeah, we're based in Scotland. So yeah, so that's the north part of the UK. But yeah, for today, so literally in UBDC, I actually I am leading the urban sensing and analytics research. You can say research direction or research thing. And we have a series of the projects, and I would say it's not all like I handle all of the projects. But today I will mainly, if I have time, so I'll mainly discuss the first three. The first one is the big sensor enhanced housing survey we have done in the past 3-4 years, I guess, and It's really about putting sensors into people's home to understand their indoor environment. And also we link the sensors with all other informations like their building energy efficiencies, their like energy usage behavior, those kind of things. We also have done one project around the housing energy efficiency models and try to estimate the energy performance of the buildings by using whatever the street views images or remote sensing images. And for sure, we use a couple of different deep learning structures to do it. And the final thing is more like because we are a data center, so we always have a need to actually create the data products. And we have been funded by the Glasgow City Council to look at the Glasgow, I mean, create a new version of the 3D city models in Glasgow. But there are a couple of other projects, as you can see here. So like the CCTV projects, like in many of the cities, we do have those CCTVs to monitor the streets, and mostly they are for police officers to look at the crimes. But like my colleague Mark Livingston, and he has been working on this project for a long time to actually using the computer vision methodology to actually extract like pedestrians, cars, buses from those kind of images or videos, and help us to understand like, okay, if we have a big event like COP26 happening in Glasgow, and will actually change the footfalls in the city center in Glasgow, something like that. And also we have another colleague, Michael, and he's mostly focusing on like using the mobile phone app data to look at the urban green space usage, particularly like during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So yeah, that's like overview of what we are doing in the current research direction or research thing. But I will start with the housing survey project. So just quickly, so we yeah depending on our jobs, but if you are not particularly outdoor workers, you would typically like spend 90% of your time indoor, and you probably spend 10% of time outdoor. And especially like say the place I live, like in Phoenix or in Glasgow, they are like two opposites. So in Phoenix, really hot during the summers, and in Glasgow, it's fairly cold and wet during the winter. And so it kind of prevent people to go out because the weather is so bad. And this is quite common for many people for spend most of the time indoor. And but the other thing is that after COVID and people just gradually moving to this kind of hybrid working format, and you will spend more and more time at home compared to in the office. So previously, like even though you have 90% of time spent indoor, but you might spend a lot of those time in your office. But right now, a lot of people spending those times at home. So it's making really actually more and more important to understand the indoor home environment for different households, and how that will actually influence people's health and how you will use the energy at home. So a series of questions we really want to analyze here. So the first objective for this project is actually we immediately to think about, okay, so if you don't have a good air quality at home, it certainly will impact your health. And it's not only your physical health, but also your like mental health for sure. And particularly like in the UK, there's a big problem of the mold growth or dampness. And if that happens, it really just create the problems that if you have a kids or elderly people living in the home. And yeah, so that's like kind of like direct link to some health conditions. But the other things like because of yeah, I think the electricity and gas price increased significantly because of the Ukraine war in Europe. And it was a big shock back to 2022, and the entire euro is actually suffer a really high gas price, electricity price. And I think that particularly adding pressures to those people in the low income communities. And also if you like live in some house like relatively inefficient. So we already have these problems like a lot of low income populations, they live in those kind of inefficient homes. It create a fuel poverty, but the high energy costs really create another layer of the problems. And this also make us to think about like what is the best way to understand people's indoor environment, not only just knowing the indoor temperatures and humidity, but also we know how much energy they use and what's their energy behavior, energy usage behavior. So that's the second objective. And the third one is like gradually, I think because of the climate change and global warming, it is not just about the average temperature increase for 1.5 Celsius degree, but it also means we have more and more extreme weather all over the world. So we in the UK, it's typically not particularly like a hot area. Maybe in the south, a couple of days every year, 32 Celsius degree. But if you look at this kind of rising summer temperature figure, and you can easily find out like the average daily maximum summer temperature is actually keep increasing in the in the southeast and the central England. And yeah, these days I think overheating problem in the UK has getting into those kind of public discussion, and more the people start to aware of, okay, so there's a general urban heat island effects, there's a global warming effect, there's an extreme weather effect, and will that actually create problems for people living those kind of poor condition homes, and what will be their indoor environment? So a couple of like I think these three objectives made us really interested in understanding people's indoor environment, and particularly not from the survey, only from the survey perspective, but putting sensors into people's home to understand. So for this entire sensor enhanced housing survey, we the idea is really like we try to incorporate the integrated indoor housing sensors with the UK household longitudinal social survey. So we want to understand the objective perspective, from objective perspective, like say um the sensor measurement is fairly like that's just the data, right? And but the other side is more subjective. So we still ask people questions about their house, about their energy usage behavior, and we try to understand their household composites, like how many kids do you have, and do you have any elderly people live there? So we try to have a much better picture of the entire like system here in terms of the buildings, indoor environment, and everything else. So, but I mean, the sensor itself is straightforward. So we have something, the Raspberry Pi, which is quite widely used open source hardware, or Arduino, and we based on those hardwares, we measure the indoor air temperatures, relative humidity, and some of the air qualities like PM sensors we have, and NOx, VOC, and also the CO2, the carbon dioxide. We also have the light and the sound sensors, but they are less useful, I would say, in our analysis. But we do have a survey as well in terms of energy consumptions, performance, also their social demographics. And also when we try to think about this survey project, and the I think the end of the game is really just to put as many as least, I mean, as many as possible of these sensors into people's home, when we're talking about this kind of IoT technology, right? So, this needs to be affordable. So otherwise, if you buy one piece like 500 pounds or like 500 US dollars, it's just too expensive to do it. So that's the basic idea, and we start with our phase one back to the winter 2021 in Glasgow, and it was the time like say when we have those kind of really high energy price, um, and also like kind of still in at the end of the COVID period, and we try to assemble our own sensors. What I will talk more, and but you can see that we reuse the boxes from the COVID testing boxes in the UK. We're putting different sensors there, and you can see some measurements like we have done, 7 days. But this is not only just about the measurement, but also about like how we will do it in terms of the entire methodology testing. So like what's the best way to send the sensors out and get it back while the like they say the posting methodology. I mean, what's the best way to do it while post? And can we actually design a cost-effective sensor survey methodology? And what sensor will we use? And like how to design those kind of hardware or software if we design our own sensor, or will we just buy some more social enterprise sensors or those kind of like more commercial sensors, and how the data will be generated and how that can be used. So we have done a series of testing around like say how we can actually mail the sensors out and get it back and reuse the sensors, because like if we want to survey like 50 people, but we may only buy 20 sensors, we just really need to reuse it. So there's a series of different testing we do. And also like how we can actually design a cost-effective sensor based on the different components. So yeah, so on the top you can see like that's how we use. We have this kind of breadboard, and we're actually connecting all the sensors to the breadboard and tied to the Raspberry Pi. So yeah, it's quite an interesting hardware project, and but I would say it's probably an undergraduate level hardware project, but it's still fairly interesting to do it. But we do review the different sensors and pros and cons, and I think a whale is one of the commercial sensors we use, and we use that to compare. It's fairly expensive, but I mean it has a fairly high consistency in terms of readings because that's commercial validated, but it's not easy to set up and only measures limited information. We also find out another one sensor called Smart Citizen, and that is coming from a previous Horizon 2020 research project, and they kind of have a social enterprise in Spain, and it provides a fairly good balance in terms of the functionalities and costs, and the ease of usage is kind of a problem because it is not like a plug and use. You need to set it up, and there are some questions people always raise. And when we do our own sensors, we try to balance. But I think the main problem we have here is that we don't have really like those kind of like hardware lab to actually validate the sensor and make sure they are accurate. So it just end up with like we started thinking, yeah, should we actually do it using some of those labs capability to do it? Just buy some sensors or ask people to validate for us. But in terms of price, you can see like Smart Citizen and our sensors, they are fairly similar in terms of price. But here's like I'll not go into details, but we have done a series of testing for the hardware and the software. And but you can see we have done 2 rounds of the survey. First round with the 20 participants, and second round also with 20 participants. And the things that we every time when you do this kind of service, you will anticipate that you will probably lose a couple of sensors, and people will either keep it or they did not want to send it back, or yeah, I mean, yeah, this happens, I would say. So that's why this entire process is quite important, just to understand that what's the real practice. And also that we typically give an incentive for the volunteers and say, yeah, if you return the sensor, we'll give you like 25 pounds or 30 pounds of the gift card or voucher for you to use, kind of like an incentive for the survey. And it also like help us to test like what's the right incentive amount we want to give. But I mean, from the sensor side, you can see that we replace a couple different sensors and make sure they are working okay in this situation. But I mean, in terms of the data we collect, so basically we have from the survey, we have the age, gender, or their health conditions. And we can also get their like income, education level, employment situation from the survey. We ask the users to do the gas and electricity reading, so we know how much energy they use. But we know their home situations, like their housing type, is that detached house or semi-detached house or apartment or flats. And also we have the sensor information. So you can see that this create like a full picture, like how people actually engage with their indoor environment relating to the energy consumptions and housing conditions. And yeah, so these are the first round of a survey. You can see that since we use this kind of mail out, take it back approach, we use a survey company to help us to find the participants. So you can see they kind of spread out in different areas in Glasgow. Yeah, but some of the initial results is that you can start to see like for the participant 11, so SIMD is one of the like to evaluate like how affluent or an area, and 7 is actually fairly good. But like this is like a family with a kid and they have a fairly good income. And from the temperature, and you can see like they will, when they are not at home, they turn off their heating. So yeah, I would say this is all during winter. So like when they leave their home, they turn off their heating, and you can see those kind of low temperatures in the readings. But they don't really change their behavior because of the high energy cost. Because yes, if you have a kid at home, you typically want to maintain a good condition, good temperature. But they live in this kind of like terrace house, double glazing, insulation for the windows, and EPC energy performance certificate that we mentioned multiple times later. So this is evaluating the energy efficiencies in the UK. So C is fairly good. I would say not as good as A, but it's okay. But like on the right-hand side, the participant 12, certainly like elderly people getting the pensions for the income, and then I guess the energy cost increase certainly squeeze his spending capability. And yeah, I think he or she tell us, yeah, okay, so um, typically turn off the heating when he or she not at home and reduce the heating when the gas price is high and go to bed. Sometimes feel cold, but if you look at the temperature, it's fairly small, but like it's really like lower than 22.5 Celsius degree. And I would say the home is actually fairly, it is actually okay. I mean, temperature is not too low, but you can start to see, okay, for the young people also, and elderly people, they certainly have a different tolerance of the cold. So that's another thing that we want to understand is that it's not only about physical readings, but also about understanding people's real behavior and their feelings of the thermal comfort. Um, yeah, so we're about to publish the phase one data, and this includes the sensor readings, the survey data set, and also the housing conditions from EPC. EPC is like open data set in the UK, so we can easily link that with the address. But the challenge we have here, so you can see like these are a couple of comparisons for the three sensors we have in the phase one. The main thing is that we do not have the lab environment to properly validate. So you can see like for some of for temperatures, we do see a gap. I mean, that's like more like a systematic error. So you can see the temperature, they are still in the same chain. But if you look at the absolute temperature or relative humidity, there's certainly a deviation from those kind of more expensive commercial sensors. Yeah, if you want to use the sensor just to compare the difference of the temperature, I think that should be fine. But if you want to use the absolute temperature, we certainly need to do more of this kind of validation or calibration. Um, and after we finished that project, and then it was in 2022, and then we published a blog about it, publishing our UBDC website. And yeah, there's invited journalism reach out to me and say, yeah, can we actually use a sensor to look at London indoor overheating? And they say, yeah, so that's totally fine. The sensor is not designed for the cold weather. You can use that in the hot weather. So after a series of discussions, we have done this project in summer 2023 last year, from July until we put sensors into people's home from late July to mid-September, and focusing on one of the fairly deprived neighborhoods called South Swart Council in actually not far away from central London, but south of the Thames River. So we focus on elderly people and people with medical conditions. Besides the physical sensor measurement and the social survey we have done before, and they actually, because they are journalists, so they actually went into people's home and did a series more in-depth interviews with them. Yeah, so multiple media stories has been generated, so I will show later. And this project has been funded by a couple of the those kind of like either the NGOs or organizations really interested in those that impact on urban health. Some of the, I mean, Google News Initiative, and I think Gates Foundation also provides some support for this. So yeah, you can see, so this is City of London, but south of that is the Southwark area. And then it's mostly the residents here, and then we place as monitors into people's home for about 1.5 months. And it ended up with we have 40 participants. And we combine those information. It gives us a fairly good understanding of the entire situation. So this is the sensor we use. So I think in this second round, we decided to, okay, so we retire our UBDC self-made sensors, but we use the smart citizen keys developed by the social enterprise I mentioned by FatLab Barcelona. And it provides a fairly good, you can see that all the sensors has been created in the two hardware boards, and then it has a battery, and also PM sensor is kind of outside, I mean, connected. And it also has this kind of like open source 3D printing cases, so we can easily do that through any of the 3D printing companies. So this is an example of how it looks like. And when we put things together, so you can see that the size is also much smaller comparing to our own sensors. And yeah, they just give you an example how it looks like. Yeah, we have done some kind of like calibration. I will not say calibration, but more like comparisons validation. So we bought another sensor called Hobo device. It's quite widely used in the climatology domain. So but you can see that the temperature wise, I think Hobo has slightly higher sensitivities in terms of like measuring the temperatures. It measures to like probably 0.01 level, Celsius degree level. And but I will say the overall trend and the deviation is not too big. And I did not draw like the buffer around it for those kind of readings, but it gives you some ideas. And in the relative humidity, it definitely we do see some systematic errors. So those will be corrected later on in the analysis. But I mean, for some of the social survey findings we have, so basically the first thing is that people saying the hottest room in their home is typically in the bedroom, and a lot of times in the living rooms. And because in London, many people live in those kind of like high-rise flats, and it's really hard to have a really tall tree next to your flats, right? So most of them, they don't have like any shade. A lot of time they have those kind of really big windows. It's really good during the winter, but like during summer, it's actually just heating up your homes easily. Um, so to understand like the heat stress indoor, so we use something called heat stress index. So that's something also has been used a lot in climatology domain. So this is a definition I think from the is that from NOAA or like it's from American? You can see that's Fahrenheit. So but basically, the most intense heat stress household we can find out is actually by combining the temperature and the humidity. You can easily see, like, say, even though some of the indoor temperature is only reaching about 30 degrees during the heat wave, but adding the indoor humidity, it actually increase above the I would say the extreme caution category of this kind of heat index, which means they experience a fairly hot environment indoor during the heat wave in London. So I think this is one of, yeah, since they're media, so they create this kind of like really creative figures. But like on that day, the September 10th, which was the heat wave, I believe that was the hottest day. And 8 homes were over like 32.5 Celsius degree. We treat it as extreme caution. And 25 of the homes, they are over 27 degrees Celsius degrees. And that's we call it as a caution only index. So it gives us some general idea. So I think people living London, they did experience this kind of like extreme heat conditions indoor. At least will only get worse, not getting better. Because if we have this kind of like global warming, extreme weathers. But the other things that we also find out a series of other interesting things, like in the UK, because I think all over the world, we talk about this kind of net zero carbon transmission, I mean, transitions and how we can actually reduce the carbon emission. And I think the communal heating or district heating is one of the way we can do that, especially for those kind of the flats and apartments. But from the survey, we know, okay, among the 40 participants, they are 25 of them tell us like if they have this kind of communal heating system, and among 10 of them actually uh they have a heating system, and also there are five of them. They cannot really turn off the system during the summer. But you can imagine that if during the summer it is already really hot outside, but you cannot turn off your heating, that just create another layer of the, heat indoor environment. And you can see like we do like quick box plot and the t-test around the average temperature in those households. But you can definitely see like there's I think that's like almost like 1.2 Celsius degree differences. 1 degree for average. Yeah, 1 degree Celsius differences for the average temperature between the households. They don't have a system, or they have a system and it is on during the summer. I would say that the sample is fairly small, so but we still observe this kind of statistically significant differences. So that really says something. But the other things that we also look at the sustained heat period. So you can imagine that is like you experience more than 3 days of relatively hot temperature in indoor, and the outcome is basically saying that if you cannot turn off your heating during the summer, you typically experience an average 20% more for the sustained heat period during our monitoring time. Um, the other side of it is that we also look at the housing energy efficiency and how that relates to the summer heating. So we have about 33 households. They have a valid EPC in record in open data set. And it ranges from B to E, and we typically think B is fairly good. It's really, really small A's in the UK right now. And E, they are fairly bad, and we have something in between the C and the D. And the things that most of the UK houses, we don't anticipate to have like a AC system. So it's most of attention has been paid to like how to keep your home warm enough during the winter and for the heating reason. But the things that a well insulated house can actually trap heat inside if there's no effective ventilation. And our assumption is that, okay, so the indoor temperature in the better energy efficiency houses, which means that they have a higher EPC, will fluctuate less compared to those houses with a poor energy for performance. And our analysis actually tell us exactly the same thing. So basically here, the box plot shows the maximum temperature, and we find out the EPCE houses, they have almost 3 Celsius degree higher maximum temperature comparing to the EPCB houses. So basically, when outdoor is really hot, those poorly insulated houses will actually, their temperature increase fairly faster comparing to those kind of EPC, much better insulated houses. But the other way is like, if we look at during the night, those poor insulated house cools much faster comparing to those like well-insulated houses. It's about 2.5 Celsius degree differences of the minimum temperature. So yeah, I think all of this just tell us that you might trap heat inside if you have a really good, well-insulated house, but you don't have a good ventilation or you don't have an AC system. But the other thing, final thing I want to say here from analysis is about humidity. So in the UK, mold or dampness is quite a big thing everywhere. So how to prevent that is quite difficult, I would say, because it's quite humid. And we find out this household, it has like this kind of humidity percentage consistently above this kind of 75%. I would say that's a standard from WHO to say you need to keep it under 75% to avoid any mold growth. And this is just bizarre when we look at this. And then we actually go back to the Bureau of Journalism, and then they told us that, yes, when they enter their home, they can see clearly the mold everywhere in their home. And I'm still waiting for the picture from them, but it actually help us to think about, okay, this sensor can also becomes more like a mold growth warning system if you start to have all of these sensors in different people's home. Yeah, so we have published all this data online in our data service. So it contains the 40 indoor sensor measurement data and a lookup table to link the sensor data, which is all the readings, with the survey and also the EPC. And we also further create a license data you can apply to get it. So you just need to sign the license with UBDC. So the things that it includes more of the building age and building installation conditions from the EPC. And in case you want to use the data for like say building simulations in the future. Yeah, the main reason we make it as a license data is because we want to prevent people to be able to re-identify people's address from like matching the EPC records with the open data set. So yeah, so this is the data citation reference. If you want to use our data, feel free to cite it. And then we will have a short conference paper out fairly soon in the April conference of the GSROC UK. And one of the PhD, our PhD will actually discuss in details about all these kind of results. Um, for this project, it's quite special. I think it's very impact-driven research. So besides we publish the data, publish the methodology in the GitHub, we also have a series of news reports and resources. So TPIJ, they have published a series of the blogs to discuss this project. And along with our center, our university, and our funders, and the Mirror is one of the, say, the UK-wide newspapers. So it's quite interesting to see. I do have a physical copy, and our median colleagues actually, he bought one in the supermarket and gave it to me. So it's actually quite fun to look at our work in a newspaper. But the other things that the SOSRAC Council, they actually, based on our analysis, they create a new action plan to deal with these kind of overheating problems in their council. So basically, they invested 1 million pounds of funding to actually deal with not only the overheating, but also the floodings. So this is an action plan, climate resilience adaptation strategy they design. So in this document, it says clearly, like say, the action plan used our findings and our studies, collaborating with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. So yeah, I think this is a very clear research impact generation. It's really happening in our research world, I guess. But I think we are really lucky to be able to actually turn our research outcomes into something policy making and also like I think the local residents, they participate in our entire project. They got their own data set and they can bring those to their landlords and to say, yeah, can you actually improve the indoor environment we experience? So I think in both ways, in the public sector, the government, also the citizens, we do all generate some impacts there. Okay, so we have done a phase 1, phase 2, and we are working on phase 3 right now. So it's now finished. And so we have this kind of called Understanding Society Innovation Panel ongoing from summer this year to spring next year. And we plan to send more sensors, about 150 to 200, 250, through the Understanding Society Innovation Panel. And the Understanding Society is one of the like I would say the UK gold standard longitudinal social survey. So basically they survey the same portion, like for example, they have a big panel, but they sample the same household across like 20 or 30 years just to understand how they actually evolve. It's kind of like very big thing in social science here. Besides the social survey, we also collaborate with with UCL, with their smart energy research lab. So they literally can get people's smart meter data. So we will know every half an hour their energy, electricity and the gas consumption. So it helps us understand much better because we can actually match the energy usage with the sensor. They are all in fairly high time granularity. So basically we'll be able to know like how much energy they use and what's their indoor temperature, etc. So this will be a brand new data set together, will be published as an open data set in early 2025. And for the sensor itself, we still use the smart season key, but this time we actually ask the Fat Lab Barcelona to actually do all the validation for us. And it was after that we will do the 3D printing of the cases. We send it to them and they will do all the validations and calibration and send it back to us for us to actually use. So this is a phase 3 we are working on right now. But a couple of future work is like we are thinking of like because we are doing the first time is like 7 days, second time 1.5 months, this time maybe 3 months and 6 months. But if we want to really do it in a long-term situation, what's the best way to do it? And we already been in touch with a couple of those kind of IoT companies. So they have existing infrastructures. They install the sensors in those kind of social rental properties. The house was owned by the councils, by the government. So they keep harvesting the reading every hour or every half an hour. And we are talking with them and see if we can actually get some of those data for us to understand the use of sensors in a long-term situation. But also the other thing is that the sensor can be used outdoor as well. So it can be also not only used in the UK, but used in developing countries, such as the urban slums. Um, so there are a couple of new things like we have put the sensors into those kind of urban slums, while the other projects, idea maps, and we're working with colleagues in Kenya and Nigeria. So basically, we're putting the sensor into urban slums, try to understand their like indoor and outdoor environments. So this is one example. And the other example is that in Glasgow, we recently have these kind of low emission zones. So if you have a fairly old car, you cannot drive into a city center. But what is actually the difference, like say, for the after we have low emission zones, what's actually the air quality differences inside and outside? Did I actually improve the air quality? So that's another thing we have done. So yeah, I will not go to the second part because of the time, but I do want to yeah, I think for this part I will probably just give you like yeah, so I will just probably go to the acknowledgement. So it, yeah, so I want to highlight the colleagues we work together. So yeah, I think many of the colleagues here, like they work as a RA, like Minkang, Chongying, and Yunbei, they just working as RA in the sensor project. Because you can imagine for all these kind of surveys, you will have a lot of this kind of logistics to deal with. And yeah, it's a lot of work behind it. And Mark and Jeremy, they help a lot in terms of helping the survey to actually happening. It's a joint leadership, I guess. And Ye Tian, he's one of our postdoc here, and he has helped us to do the Nairobi project and also the Glasgow low emission zone project. And he will move to UC Dublin as an assistant professor fairly soon. So yeah, that's another way. If you want to collaborate on those, we are more than happy to do so. Yeah, but we have a couple of other like say colleagues here, like Joss. She's mostly working on the 3D city model project, and I also collaborate with Fang and Maolan, and we work on the EPC projects. So I did not get a chance to introduce those, but I'm more than happy to certainly discuss if you're interested. I mean, I can provide a reference later on as well. Yeah, I think I will probably stop here and take any questions if you have. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And yeah, let me see if I can. Yeah, so here's my contact again. So you can email
yeah,
me or find out my website or whatever. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks for Dr. Zhao's wonderful talk. And now I think the floor is open. And I just saw someone raise hand, but no, where? I just saw someone raise hand. Yeah, one. Oh, oh yeah. I will allow to. Yeah. Okay, you can ask your question. Yeah.
Yeah, can they actually speak or they can only type? Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
Hello, I have a question.
yeah, yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
And it's
Says in this study, we see temperature is recorded as the um, temperature of a fixed point in the room. Should we pay more attention to the temperature at this point of the temperature in different rooms, or consider the precinct temperature, using with humidity or wind speed.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks
By
for
the way,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So yeah, so thanks for the question. So yeah, I think the main thing here is that because we only send one sensor into people's home, and for the first project, we ask them to put it in the rooms they spend most of their time, so mostly in the living rooms or the bedroom. And for the second project, I think the TBIJ, they want to simplify the process, so they just they ask the participant to leave the sensors in their bedroom. Yeah, but this is certainly not ideal. So the ideal situation is that you should put sensors into all the rooms, and you actually understand at the same time what's the temperature in the kitchens, what's the temperature in the living rooms, what temperature in the bedrooms, right? I think for those kind of long-term measurement I mentioned in the future work, for those companies, they typically putting sensors into multiple rooms and gives a much complete understanding of the indoor environment. Yeah, I would say that's certainly the next step. Is that can we actually do those? But the main barrier is that the sensor is not cheap. They are not cheap, and so it can be cumbersome. I mean, can be difficult to send multiple sensors into one household. I'll just say that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you very much for
answer
your
your question. Yeah.
yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions from our audience? Yeah. If you have some questions, you can raise your hand. No, no questions. Yeah. I see no question from our audience. I also have a question about, because I also do some research about um, urban analysis, and also we also do some research about how to use image data to calculate the PV solar energy. Hmm?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I saw your screen is. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Yes, there's some problem with the screen. Yeah, yeah. So I just thought, do you think now we use a lot of AI technologies, but we still have a lot of traditional urban analysis method. So do you think um, the ideal one is we can integrate these two type of analysis method, but do you think is there any trace that AI uh, methodologies can be used instead of, or totally instead of traditional methods?
Uh, yeah, but I think AI is really, yeah, so that really depends on the data. So I think AI is certainly suitable for some type of data. So like for example, let me see if I can find the slides here. So we have done we have done like this kind of we use the AI to actually predict the building energy efficiency by using either the EPC official EPC records and also Google Street View. And when we have this kind of data set, it helps us to actually understand, okay, so um, from the outside, so we don't need to, yeah, if we don't have an EPC, so we just we use the street views, we use the satellite images, we understand the building efficiency. But typically from outside, that's not enough. Sometimes we need indoor images. So from some property listing companies, we can have those. So that will help. But I mean, I would say it will be really hard to, if you have, like particularly in those kind of social survey world, like people will not use AI because this is not a huge, yeah, it is a huge data set, and the data set is designed for research purposes. And but I think in that domain, people will not quite use AI because the traditional statistic methods will be the right way to do it. So I would say this is really like it really depending on what you research and what data set you have. And we typically find the best methodology to suit for our data set, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for your answering. So, since no questions from our audience, I think I would like to close this webinars, and so
Yeah, I think do we? Yeah,
yes,
I think we have another in the Q&A.
yeah. We have got another one. Your samples are very limited. How can natural city be understood through a limited survey and a sensor of dozens of house? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question.
Yeah.
And I would say this. I would say when you are doing surveys, it's typically really hard to cover the entire population, I guess. The first thing is that I mean we have these kind of sensors every 10 years in the UK or China or American. But the reason we only do it every 10 years because it is really costly and it takes a lot of time to do it. But it also provides those like a gold standard data set for us to understand our like social demography situation. So that's the thing. I mean, the sensor is the same. So eventually, I think the hardware you're getting cheaper and cheaper, and we might be able to pull those kind of like all the sensors into people's home everywhere. And at some point, I guess we can actually further upscale. Like say right now we are doing 150 to 200 households. And then we can maybe do in the future, if understanding society, they take our methodology, so they can do it in their main panel, which is thousands of households. But like if, for example, if you want to look at understand the entire city, depending on what you want to understand, like if you want to understand the entire city's housing energy efficiency, I think a better way is actually using remote sensing images and street views and combining with maybe the EPC data set we have here. So I think that might be a better way to understand the entire city. But yeah, can you elaborate a little bit more? Like say, what do you mean by what sort of thing you want to understand for the entire city?
Yeah. So I think we got the right time. So since no question,
Yeah, thanks.
since no questions, yeah. So I would like to thanks Dr. Zhao again. So may I invite all of our audience to show our sincerest thanks to Dr. Zhao for today's webinar. And if you still have some interest with Dr. Zhao's research, and you can also contact Dr. Zhao through mail, and you can also write mails, and also through some other channels to contact Dr. Zhao. Yeah. So yeah, we got the right time. So thanks again. So see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you.